Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Gascally Statements from Gearworks.com and the E2KG Network podcasting channel here on YouTube. Back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast, Grown Ups Who Game, episode number 85. This is our deep dive format show. And tonight we are going to be talking about the rise of the PC. Here in the bathtub of console generation 8, in the waning years of this current generation of technology, how the PC rises to eminence as demonstrated by the various goings-on out at the Game Developers Conference. Here with me, as always, I have two of the finest and most knowledgeable gentlemen in games journalism. Mr. Swissguard, how you doing, Swiss?
I don't know how much of that I can take.
And DBQ Hams, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. It's great. I'm so glad you called us gentlemen. That's really nice. I sure appreciate it. Elmo loves it too. Thank you.
Well, we are back to do our normal shtick, and this week we will be talking about kind of what we have nailed down and identified as the key trend in the games industry news cycle going on this week. Every couple of weeks, in alternating fashion with our Gamer Experience show, we sift and grind and shuffle and flip-flop all of the gaming news, and we try and see what theme comes out on the Ouija board as we aggregate it all. And what we determined after reading the tea leaves this week is that what it appears like, as I've mentioned, is that in these final, probably what will be 2 years of the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and this is a kind of a historical norm, what's important to the gaming industry and what's important as far as what's going on in the gaming industry and the large wave moves that are being made don't have so much to do necessarily with technology changes that are going on the Xbox platform or the PlayStation platform. It's more so about what goes on the PC and how the need for innovative technologies by the consoles first gets deployed and demonstrated on PC and then eventually trickles down. Since those consoles are, I would still contend, 2 years from launch, the demonstration and the proof of concept of those technologies in the wild kind of needs to be going on now so that they are ready and technology mature by 2020. So there's a lot of themes that we've seen this week, and last week. I really should say last week, because it's really the news cycle that we're talking about here on Tuesday, the 19th of March. So first of all, probably the biggest story, well, not the biggest story. Yes, the biggest story. Probably the, I do not know what the heck is going on with our agenda in comparison to what we actually talked about in the pre-show now. So,
well, I think we're just going to wing it, right? This is,
yeah.
We're in the bathtub of the generation. We're just going to stir it all up and see what floats to the top.
So first of all, in possibly more fun news rather than industry technical analysis, is Halo, the Master Chief Collection, is coming to PC via both the Windows Store and Steam. I thought that last piece was the most interesting part of this news mention. We heard rumors that this was going on. Then after a couple of days, we got official statements from Microsoft. I was taken off guard that the game is going to be deployed into the Steam store. DBQ, did that catch you off guard as well?
Yes, very much so. I think there were plenty of rumors circling for a while related to it coming to PC. But the fact that it's on Steam, I just checked again that there's a page for it with a trailer, but it is not available for pre-order yet. So yeah, I think in some ways I'm glad that it is, because it actually probably broadens the market for it rather than kind of locking it in behind the Windows Store. And back within that industry lens, I think it does provide an interesting piece related to Microsoft's approach, right? They are that idea of their streaming services, the idea of Xbox Live getting out on a variety of platforms, that they're getting their games out there to as broad of an audience as possible. And I think putting it out on Steam certainly does that. In some ways, Steam is an interesting choice all over Epic, given all the other stuff that's been going on, where Epic's been kind of not only more profitable, but also trying to negotiate some exclusives as well. So yes, I think that is I think the other piece here that is interesting is the way that it's rolling out, right? That it is not rolling out in kind of the Master Chief Collection as it did on Xbox One, but you are purchasing it, but it's rolling out in chronological order, with Halo Reach being first. And Halo Reach will be added to the Master Chief Collection for Xbox One as well, and it's not there now. So I think it's an interesting way to allow people to enjoy or to spend time, whether that is making their way through the campaign or to give each game a little bit of a streaming audience as it launches, by trickling them out individually. So actually, PC is the first place that I played Halo, playing the Gearbox port of Combat Evolved back in the day. So yeah, to me, that this is a nice piece. The fact that they're not just kind of porting it over, but it sounds like it's going to come with the bells and whistles related to a PC release in terms of field of view, 4K resolution, a number of other graphical scaling pieces, and ability to rebind keys and everything else. So it seems like they're giving it its due, and not just making it a quick and dirty port. Source, do you have any thoughts here on this one before we move on to the next topic?
Not too many. You pretty much summarized what my reaction was, which was yes, it was interesting that it's coming to Steam, but given all the news we've heard about Microsoft kind of getting their tendrils in alternative platforms, and like we're definitely seeing a new strategy from them starting to come to fruition. So it wasn't like super shocking. And did I see like a rumor or something that the next Halo was gonna be a launch title for the next Xbox platform? I thought that was way out there.
I'm pretty sure that's a rumor, but it seems a realistic one potentially as well.
Well,
yeah, so that definitely kind of lines up. I'm sorry, go ahead, Swiss.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, we're starting to see maybe get people excited about Halo again. Just roll them out every now and then. Keep Microsoft's big franchise in the towards the front of people's minds, and maybe this is all kind of starting very, very early on, laying the groundwork for like a big Halo 6 or whatever it is exciting reveal.
Well, my question for you, Swiss, is so did this particular marketing campaign work? So you, as a core PC gamer, but not an Xboxer, do we?
Yes. The short answer is yes. I have never really been in the Microsoft gaming ecosystem, so the most I played probably Halo 2 back in the day on my cousin's Xbox in multiplayer. So that's pretty much it. Every now and then I've thought, hey, I'd like to go try that out, but I've never had an Xbox. If they had locked this into the Microsoft only store, I would have just dismissed it entirely, because I cannot stand the Microsoft store. I don't want to be logged in with my Microsoft account. It bugs me. So the fact that it will be in with the rest of my PC gaming library, I'll probably pick up. I'll see about picking them up depending on what the price point is.
So DBQ, my question for you is, do you think that this also concurrently heralds a pivot to a PC first development mentality on Halo Infinite? The platforms are now all x86. Xbox is now all done in DirectX across both PC and Xbox.
So let me answer that question with a question: is how different is PC-based development from whatever the next Xbox platform in terms of their infrastructure? How different is that really? I mean, in some ways, our internals, relatively similar at this point.
So that's a very good question. It actually leads us down a different path, right? Slightly. We know that at least one SKU of Scarlet, the low end SKU, will be essentially no metal, right? I mean, you're going to have a box that's essentially nothing more than a NIC,
That is
right?
the
And
rumor. Yeah.
a video output port. All of the hardware infrastructure is going to be back at home base, and you would think that will all be PC, right? I mean, I don't know why you would have a bunch of Xboxes in a rack, right?
No, right? I mean, it's going to be servers in some sense of it. Yeah.
Right. So in that case, you don't have an Xbox console componentry in between that server and the player. Again, it seems to lean towards and in fact, with the whole way that they're positioning the product line, it would seem to say that let's basically code this for PC, and then that essential hardware optimization phase of development, the Xbox hardware platforms just become like another like PC target or even GPU target for hardware optimization. I don't Swiss, were you going to jump in here?
I was just going to say they're probably going to start viewing Xbox hardware as just a commodity PC that you hook up to the TV that you can that they can kind of control and throw out there for that gaming segment. In a way, it's kind of I'll save that for when we get to the Google News.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and keep this Rolling Thunder campaign going, because I think the reason we let off with Halo Master Chief Collection is because all of this stuff kind of heralds all of these things that came really hot on the heels of each other. Kind of the next domino that we saw fall in the news cycle was Valve's announcement that Steam Link will now stream PC games anywhere, including to iOS and Android primarily. What's funny to me is, could this be so meta where you could play Halo, the Master Chief Collection, on a PC purchased through Steam and stream it over to your Xbox to play it there?
So at least what it looks like now is that you're going to need the some type of app, right? The Steam Link app to be able to do this. Whether that comes on, at least from the story that I've been reading here, whether it comes through Android or iOS or even loaded up onto a Raspberry Pi. So whether or not you can get that on a Xbox or a PlayStation, I think is still part of the question. But I think you raise a good point in terms of coming full circle, is that you could be streaming a Steam game, a Valve game, a Microsoft game on a Valve service onto a Google-led device and wrap up all of our streaming products all in one confusing ecosystem.
Right. So this announcement is primarily about how you can run the Steam Link Anywhere application now on Android, on an Android phone or an Android TV, or as you mentioned, a Raspberry Pi. Interesting that they didn't necessarily say Android tablet, and of course, Android doesn't differentiate as greatly between a phone or a tablet piece of target hardware. What they do not have enabled right now is iOS and being able to do it on the Apple TV. And of course, Steam and Apple came into loggerheads earlier. I was going to say earlier this year, I guess late last year, about the Steam application and the whole 30% cut that Apple gets running on iOS. So we don't yet know just exactly how far this will go. It's yet another cloud service in the mix. Interestingly enough, it seems like an iron that they tried to strike in advance of other potential competitors announcing things at GDC. Swiss, anything that you wanted to mention specifically about Valve and Steam Link Anywhere?
Well, I think you're right about it's kind of a preemptive strike, but it's kind of weak in that you're only streaming to basically devices on your network. In theory, you could connect it to your home PC, and you could be off in the cloud somewhere, but your house is going to need really great, internet access to support that. From outside. It's basically, I think pretty much the Steam Link stuff has been pretty much limited to your local Wi-Fi network or your local LAN. So while it's nice, it's in theory you wouldn't be very far from your PC anyways, which brings us, I guess, to our next story, which is really what people want when they think streaming.
Yeah, and I mean, I hesitate to mention this because we have friends, we have close friends who do this. Like I've just never understood any of the need for any of these things about local shoot. Like I never really understood Steam Link. Like why? Like my PC is right over there. Why do I need to place shift it like 10 feet, right, to play it on a different device? Same thing in a lot of ways with, I mean, remote play on PlayStation when it originally debuted. That gave you the ability to play away from your home network. But this whole implementation was so goofy in terms of if you were local on your LAN, it still sent those bits and packets out to the internet and then sent them back in to your PlayStation Portable. And then the whole thing about sending games from your Xbox over to your PC, I still really don't get. And I've written and shot videos and had a lot of tech talks about what happens to video quality when you do that. So there's a chunk of this that I just kind of don't get to a certain extent.
I mean, as somebody who does this with his Vita, but I do it sitting on the couch while somebody else is watching TV, or, in some ways it takes the place, and I could see the Steam Link application taking this place as well, where you could be playing your full-fledged game sitting while you've got another screen up, or sitting in your room, in a bed. I think there's cases for it, but they seem kind of luxury based, and not, they're periphery. They're not going to be your main way that you're playing that.
Yeah, and let me first of all say I'm the king of doing things simply to prove whether or not they can be done, right? For no real right. It's so where I guess where it gets shocking to me is that people actually do it like theoretically for a reason. Now, BBQ, the use case you just described, I get that. Like because what you do is you enable the availability of a title that's not available on the Vita to be played there. So, however, place shifting. I'm sorry, Swiss. Were you going to add one more thing?
You finish that thought, and then I'll chip in.
Well, my thought's a segue. So,
all right. Well, I was just going to say the other thing about the Steam Link, you still need your beefy super gamer PC to make it work.
Yeah, yay, verily. But despite my consternation, frustration, and lack of understanding, that's not a word. Streaming, as far as place shifting, I should say, because we use streaming in like 9 different ways in today's world. Place shifting of games in some ways, and remote delivery of games is about to go definitely off your home LAN and network and go global, shall we say? Because the big Papa Daddy of them all, Google, held a press conference today. Actually, they've been rolling thundering this thing as well in the walk up to, I guess, today, what was the largest increment of their bundle of announcements. We will come back to that topic of bundling here in just a few minutes. Announced their plans to get into the gaming industry. BBQ, you watched the press conference. Why don't you brief us on the most pertinent details from that?
Okay, so Stadia, I believe I'm saying it right. It's kind of like Stadium, but it's Stadia. Yes, I did watch most of the press conference. It started really kind of slow, and I guess in a very kind of tech Google type of way, talking about how many servers they have and how much processing capability. But I think really the I'm gonna hit on a couple main points here, and we'll kind of have an option to spin out of those. But so It's Project Stream, but it's now called Stadia. So Project Stream was what was betaed last fall. It ran from October to January. A few of us used it with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Prime had it streaming on his Windows tablet at one point in time. I had it streaming on an incredibly low-end $60 Chromebook. But it is the idea that you are running a AAA or any type of game off of Google's servers and being able to play it on any device with, as Swiss can attend to, any device with a strong enough internet connection to be able to stream it. The press conference itself had some kind of neat quirks within there where they had it moving back and forth from a number of Google devices. So moving from a Chromebook to a tablet to a phone and being able to pick it up and run with it at each, basically moving it from one platform to the other without a whole lot of hiccups and being able to sync up and join from right where you were. Some of it seems to be connected to the controller, actually. So the controller is a specially designed controller. It looks kind of like a cross between a DualShock and an Xbox controller, maybe a little bit closer to the size of a Pro controller for a Switch, but it's got.
If I can interject really quickly, what's interesting about its design is it actually looks like an old school Microsoft PC controller that they made. That was the Sidewinder. It may have been called the Sidewinder Tilt, but basically it was a Sidewinder that had motion control available in it. So,
nice. Okay. Yeah. No, I can see where it does definitely look very similar to that. You do have a couple additional buttons. There's a capture button and a share button, so that they do exactly what you would think. It sounds like the controller is actually syncing with your Wi-Fi network, so that in the demos at least that they were running it, where the controller, you could be using the same controller as you move from device to device, because it is syncing with whatever is coming off of the Stadia servers as well. So there's some seamless magic aspects there that are happening. The capture and share do what they say, but it also ties in very distinctly with what Google is trying to do with Stadia as well, which is where we get the stadium aspect of this, is they are leaning into some serious YouTube integration with this as well. So the ability to, some of the use case scenarios that they provided was the ability to be watching somebody stream a game on YouTube, or at least see game footage on YouTube, and potentially not only have the option to jump in and play that game through your Stadia platform, but also jump in and play from that streamer's save as well. So pick up, from whatever godlike build that they have, or min-maxed ability for, for given whatever loot game, or even the Assassin's Creed game, to jump to a certain battle. So there's some additional potentials there, that being able to be all within the Google infrastructure potentially brings them. So again, all of this is hypothetical. This is GDC, so a lot of what they're talking about is the potential to develop around this, where you are not only being able to develop AAA games within this streaming platform, but they spent some time talking about kind of the kind of strength and processing power, the low latency aspects of it all, so that from a developer audience, that they can kind of make what they want to make, but then the idea of throwing in some of these additional hooks related to potentially extra revenue sources for developers in terms of, and for streamers. So all that is there within the platform itself. The announcement also brought out some old friends to us old timers in terms of we had Phil Harrison come out, formerly at Sony, coming out to do some additional talk around the controller and the device. And then we also had Jade Raymond come out, formerly of EA and formerly of Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed development and game designer there. She is now and she tweeted this last week. She's a VP at Google, but she is now in their a game studio at Google. So they'll be making additional games, or at least potentially empowering some of that development as well. Also in the audience, you had one of the leads and founders of Ubisoft, and so definitely Ubi, who is usually frequently at the start of any console launch, is here as well at the beginning of this. Sounds like on the GDC floor, they've got 2 demos of this going on. One is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which has already been proven to run really well. And a second one is related to some of the machine learning game design that they are talking about, that this also has the ability to do. So kind of not only looking at paintings and mapping things out in terms of a certain style, but I think it, again, GDC, that it's showing some of the kind of game tool building aspects that are built in with Stadia as well. So I think I caught most of the Stadia news there. I want to, to me, this is interesting. We knew something was coming from Google. We weren't quite sure what it is. It does seem like there's going to be, there's designs and images out there of a box as well for this. How much of that is necessary? Maybe that is the box to run Stadia on your TV, if you could also be running it on other devices and in a Chrome browser. It's going to launch sometime in 2019, but what all the details are yet is still kind of quiet. So to me, this is I thought I wasn't going to be interested in this, but now that it's out there, I'm curious to see what this does, and I'm also curious to see what it does, not only in terms of a platform, but what it does for game design. Like if people actually lean into the YouTube aspects of this, or Assassin's Creed ran really well, but that's also a game that doesn't necessarily, it's not a fighting game. It's not a Twitch-based shooter. Is there going to be a limitation on the type of games, or is a battle royale game going to have to be designed in such a way that it accounts for the latency, or does Google server farms have enough to handle it? So, Gasicles, I know you have some thoughts on this, so I'm going to kick it back over to you now that I've done the wrap up.
And I'm going to actually pass the baton on to Swiss, because I want to hear what he has to say first.
I'm not sure really what to make of this. I can't decide whether this is like a great leap, like a massive leap forward for the industry, or if it's currently Google's shiny, and then in 3 or 4 years it's like goes the way of Google Plus. You know what I mean? So the interesting aspect is like you can get games for all, because we're not tied to hardware per se, but you're obviously going to need a very significant bandwidth to support it. They haven't said anything about the pricing model yet. So, the other thing to consider is like everybody's like, well, we want to stream, we want to get this service oriented. So it sounds good from a consumer's perspective. Oh, you don't have to have the hardware anymore, but really we've had inflation, but we haven't really seen the prices of hardware go up. to match. So like we've been at $300 and $400 for game consoles for, well over decades now, right? So I don't really think that that's a prohibitive barrier to entry. And if it is a prohibitive barrier to entry, somebody for $300, if that's a prohibitive barrier to entry, are they going to be paying a $20 a month fee for Google services plus the $60 or $70 a month that's going to cost for, quality fiber internet? So I'm really not sure yet whether this is like a true like disruptor. I wasn't.
That's an interesting convergence you just mentioned. If I said it, because kind of what you're saying is that the only people the demographic of people who are likely to pay both the subscription fee for this service and for the infrastructure service that they would need in terms of connectivity to their home are the people who could already afford to buy a PC that could run in this on-prem. Right.
Well, not just a PC, because I mean, I understand a PC. Like it's like you have to invest a lot to have a good gaming PC, but like an Xbox or a Switch or a PlayStation, that's accessible to most consumers, I would say.
Yeah, I think what they wind up scooping is they wind up scooping that those fence riders who like they would get into it, but they like. I mean, in this world with what is her name, Maria Kondo, right? There, there there are people who have an issue with owning things, right? Let's even talk about this generationally, right? Like millennials don't like owning anything. They don't own cars. They're probably not going to own it, right? So here's now a whole generation of people, right? These are all the guys who they don't own any of their own music. They all do Spotify, Pandora, right? All this stuff. They don't own their own video. They all just have subscriptions to Netflix. That, oh, by the way, they passed around the logins to. So maybe 1 out of 10 of them actually has a subscription to Netflix, right? I mean, that's a big generational bow wave of people you could potentially scoop who might not be so inclined to do what we've always done, which is always have that console, that physical presence in your own home.
And that's fair. If the price point is right, because like you said, they're sharing Netflix passwords and it's like $8 a month. So, I mean, $10 a month, right? Are they going to want to spend $19.99 a month or $14.99 a month or whatever it is? And if they're that fence ridery, is that a demographic you want to build your infrastructure on?
So one thing I'd pitch is where I can see this generating some heat is so remember the old dorm rooms when we were kids, right? Or even for some of us, we were close enough that the people right behind us had these dorm rooms, right? The dorm rooms that had 1 or 2 Xboxes in them, right? Or the hall of dorm rooms where it was 10 to 15 guys, and between them all, they had like 4 Xboxes, and they would all bring them in and chain link them into a local LAN, right? And that was a thing. Now you're going to have a dorm room. Let's say you have a room with 2 to 4 roommates in it, right? Those roommates all go in on one Google streaming account, right? Now maybe in a whole room, again, you have like 4 accounts, and people just pool it and they pass it around. My point being, this is where a lot of these devil in the details things come out. Like what is Google going to do? Because of course, on the front end of this announcement, Google didn't mention a word about the DRM that's going to be associated with this implementation, which we are absolutely certain there will be. Are they going to be locking IP addresses so that only one instance of the cert, right? I mean, will they allow concurrent streaming like you have with Netflix? I mean, if you remember back in the day, Netflix was very stingy about concurrent streaming when they first dropped. So yeah, I mean, those types of things will be interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Swiss.
I forgot my point. It's just I don't know. Like like you said, it may be a generational. Every time I'm like, I don't think just streaming like this is gonna matter, but I am somebody that likes to have my PC and somebody that likes to have my console. And even now, when I'm using Steam and using the Nintendo eShop quite a bit, I still feel like a little perturbed every time I purchase something because I know I'm not really purchasing it. I'm getting a perpetual license to the software, and it's not the same thing.
Right, right. And then one of your questions was, is that the demographic you want to build your empire on? And 10, 15 years ago, I would have said no, right? But in our time, we've seen this rise of not only the rise, and I think it was almost a rubber band effect. I think this demographic of people came in and then they were on the wane. And then I think in this heyday of streaming, they've resurged. There are people who are only buying a console to do nothing but play Fortnite. They literally don't play anything on their PlayStation but Fortnite or on their Xbox. Or maybe they play 2 to 4 games or 8 games. But these are people that break the historical paradigm that we grew up in and are probably still in of I buy a console and over a 4 to 8 year life cycle, my key objective is once I've paid into the platform, I assemble this collection, this library of games that is somehow connected to my pride of ownership, right? So, I mean, Fortnite almost entirely is built upon the notion of casual gamers who only play Fortnite. And so maybe that's what maybe Google sees. Somebody somewhere is figuring out, hey, the hardcore gamers are going to go with the Xbox Cloud platform because they're still going to own hardware, and it's just like it's an enabling attachment service to their hardware orientation. And the Google thing is going to be more so about right getting grandma and aunt whatever
Yeah.
and Uncle Fester to go ahead.
I honestly feel like you're probably right, and it's just my get off my lawn mentality is really starting to break through. So,
but I don't know that that's drastically different, Swiss and Agasicles, in terms of 2 generations ago. Even 1 generation ago on the 360, you had people who would buy a 360 to play their annual Call of Duty and Madden, right? I mean, there is a whole market there. There's a reason that Call of Duty was the #1 selling game every year, and Madden was right up there in the top 3. That there is this universe or this market of people who are in that kind of not fully casual but semi-casual, where they that idea of having, and I think Fortnite is just took it to the nth degree, is that they're comfortable just playing the few games. And potentially, if this streaming platform or any other, if Amazon comes up with something, or Microsoft is already prepping their xCloud, if they have a game that hooks people to that degree, it can be sustainable. I also do wonder too, where, given what Swiss is saying, is given the infrastructure that's needed to run this successfully, that you are looking at that younger generation that you're talking about, Agasicles, in terms of this is going to be, I would think that this is going to be a more urban, a more metropolitan, suburban type of console. It's going to see its uh, sales density around population density because of bandwidth issues as well.
Well, it's gonna be very interesting. Like there's a huge amount of technical entanglement in this, and in how it can be delivered and how it can be implemented. So first off, for me, they've made the mention of it's going to do 4K at 60 frames per second. Like, dudes, like the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro can barely pull that off with local hardware running on metal. And Google says they're going to deliver it over the cloud.
At what price, right? I mean, that's the thing that gets me, is where is this price point that's going to do that?
Well, and then think about all the tendrils that goes out to, right? Like, is Comcast going to be okay with you sending petabytes of data across their lines and they're not getting any cut of it? Like, I mean, that's going to be an interesting thing to see unraveled. My big question, because I'm a heavy bitrate guy as a streamer, is okay, what's the bit rate, right? Because to do 4K at 60 frames per second, you're talking, in my mind, I think you're talking for over 40 megabits per second. Um, and that's the rate that I record at locally, on my highest end systems. So I just like and again, I'm sitting on FiOS, so I think maybe I could get that delivery, but then the problem is that that pipe isn't direct to direct, right? It comes from a Google server. It cuts across at a CDN interconnect. It pops onto a lower bandwidth highway, right? It gets delivered to you, and there's all sorts of network issues that make that a non-linear thing. Like, for instance, where I live, I'm on a FiOS connection. I can send stuff out of here at 10 megabits per second, higher if I'm going to YouTube, but at peak hours, right? And I'm on I'm on an asynchronous connection, right? So who is on whenever doesn't matter. But because there's a point where my network connection converges somewhere upstream, at peak hours, I can't get 1080p video on YouTube, right? So I mean, the technical aspects of these things are kind of mind boggling, and let's you mentioned it's urban, right? Well, in an apartment building, it's a common pipe that comes into the building. So if there's
Yeah,
20,
that's a very good point. Yeah.
so yeah, so I just like the number of instances where Google doesn't experience like an incredible amount of friction in trying to deliver that service to any individual. I'll be very impressed to see how that goes down. Um, there's lots of other questions in this thing too, right? So essentially, Stadia is not only infrastructure, but essentially it also requires a publishing arrangement, right? Because the source of the games that will be available on the service will be both Google's independent content, but also things that are distributed on its platform from the publishers. What we have seen across the various entertainment industries is publishers in general are not as friendly towards Google as they are towards Apple. So coming up with those deals, like Ubisoft seems to be all hot and lathered up about this, but like is I mean, but I think we pretty much know Epic's not going to deploy Fortnite on on Stadia, because they're not even putting Fortnite in the App Store for Android. Like, so all these things will drive like availability of titles too. But the really big thing that I want to make sure we get out into the live show tonight is one thing that I don't know that anybody has brought up, but is actually my key principal concern, whether or not Google can pull this off. And I really wish Prime was here on the show. Is the increasing volume of the potential for antitrust moves against Google. And in this environment, Google is going to choose to spread their span even wider into yet another market in industry, right? So now you're going to say Google's going to own the servers, they're going to own content, they're going to own the delivery mechanism, right? And and the search, right? So they own YouTube, the thing you just mentioned, DBQ, which I also saw in the article, right? So now the Department of Justice, right, is going to look at Google and go, you own the advertising platform you own the search platform where people Google for it, right? I mean, Google is now a replacement in the dictionary for the term search. You own the search platform that people utilize to find the thing. You own the video streaming service that has the trailer on it. You now own the delivery mechanism to provide the game to them via an arrangement with the publisher, right? and you have the competitive advantage of being able to deliver that game instantaneously in comparison to the competitors who have to sell them a physical copy or make it available as a digital download. like like to me, as much as it seems funny to say it, that it's gaming, like more so than like selling airplane tickets or finding concert venues or like this is the thing that to me, like if a lawyer looks at that, they go, game over. Like you just sprung the antitrust trap, like out of nowhere. I mean that's a lock crate and barrel case right there, right? I mean, am I off my rocker? I want to hear what you guys think about that.
How much would you differentiate gaming as a form of entertainment from YouTube as a form of entertainment? Because like right now, can't you buy like movies through YouTube or something right now? But is that really a thing? Because everything you just summarized could be applied to the film industry.
Absolutely, and I think in this environment, right? And this is the other thing is, again, this is where I sometimes question Google's wisdom, right? Maybe not the best time to do this, as all of these candidates are gearing up for their 2020 election campaigns. Because we just saw, right, Elizabeth Warren, right, release this whole thing of like any company that's valuated at $25 billion or more, I'm gonna break them up, right? Like no ifs, ands, buts, no rhyme or reason. So Swiss, your question about why is it different? It's not, but the topic of YouTube, the topic of YouTube needing to be broken away from Google has definitely come up, and I think that will gain strength. The other thing is, in particular, in Senator Warren's proposed plan, is there's no now. Admittedly, this might be why something like this would never come to fruition. There is no harm causality in that at all, right? So she says you have to break up YouTube because Google both makes content on its own platform and provides the platform. But and this is my own original thought. The Verge covered this on the Vergecast, right? No YouTuber is sitting cowering in fear of YouTube original content, right? Stealing views from them, right? So, but the big problem is that the current generation of people in power making these decisions, number one, aren't technically savvy or sufficiently competent. Two, they appear to not be hiring the people that would be able to advise them appropriately to gain technical competence and validity, right? In a world where we see that the FAA defaulted to not thinking that the Boeing 737 had a software problem because they had only seen 2 airplanes crash. In my world, that's sufficient causality for me to ground an aircraft, but that's a different topic. So, but yeah, I think the thing is you're right. It's the same as some of these other things. I question whether or not it's a tip over point, because it's like the third rock that you put in the basket, or for the fact that nobody cares if it's like a lot of these people, none of them care if it's genuinely harmful. It's just it's a large burgeoning, now increasing center of mass that they feel needs to be targeted.
And your point to the technical competence of those that would be the movers and shakers was kind of why I brought it up, which is, would they see this as a different thing, really? Obviously, we as gamers, yeah, we see this as a completely different form of entertainment. And it's like, how dare you conflate fuzzy kitten videos with Assassin's Creed Odyssey? But I'm glad I hadn't really thought of it in that term. So that was kind of good. And, it's kind of a weird time, because you're right, Senator Warren was the one that I think put that out there. But there's rumblings across the political spectrum. It's not just a left wing. It's kind of weird that it's not just a left wing or right wing thing. Like there's a lot of suspicion right now against big tech. And I think anytime you see one of these, Google, Microsoft, or Amazon maybe gobbling up another, like encroaching another industry, or Facebook, it's going. I think it would raise those questions. So I think that's an excellent point.
Thanks. And yeah, and I'll add to that, right? In a time when I will be surprised if we don't soon see some degree of consolidation amongst the big third party publishers, right? Because I feel like they're hitting a point where they can't sustain what they've been doing, right? So as unfortunately as the gamer market starts to contract and become one that primarily funnels their money towards microtransactions, battle royale games, and season passes for free to play stuff or low cost stuff, and away from, you had Amy Hennig in the last couple weeks, claim in a shocking state, in a statement that was shocking to me when I considered the truth of it, saying that a game like Uncharted would never get a green light in this day and age. And I think she's probably 87% correct. I mean, essentially EA has gone through and slashed and burned any project that it's had on its roster that looked anything like in Uncharted. So, if the industry does start to consolidate, and I mean, I have to believe that in the approach path between now and the next generation, at least one of them has to go away, right? In some type of big merger, or just sell off, right? Or being bought by one of the console manufacturers. Although Sony and 2K waved off on that rumor having any validity, but still, right? In a world where you can only do in Apex, right? I'm like, what is there a need for a multi-billion-dollar corporation that's a publisher that isn't tightly coupled to an actual hardware platform or infrastructure service? So it'll be interesting to see that unfold. We were going to talk a little bit about the Apex season pass, but we're pushing it on time. And probably at this point, there's tons of streamers that you can go out and watch playing the Apex Battle Pass, who hopefully can explain to you its content. I'd say the most interesting thing about it is it turns out, as we've been trying to watch to see exactly what they were going to do, that it's about $10, which I think is cheaper than the Fortnite Battle Pass.
It's actually it's under $10. It's like $8.50, which
Okay.
I think the Fortnite Battle Pass. I think most of the Battle Passes kind of run in that $10 to $14 range.
Okay. All right. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. I've been one who's contended that the review scores for Apex should have never been released until the first Battle Pass came out, so we could see what that business model was going to look like. It makes things interesting because I think at the end of the day, in this world where everything is battle royale, that's how you differentiate, right? Is on who's delivering what for how much, and how gamers evaluate that at the instances of the season pass delivery. So, gentlemen, anything else that you want to cover? I am fine. I would be fine if we take the remaining minutes to explore any other gunnels that we want to scurry down, as I did with the antitrust litigation vector.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, DB.
No, I think, I mean, it's a good discussion, right? I think in some ways what you said, Swiss, of how disruptive this actually ends up being is something that we're going to have to continue to watch, and what the market shakes out like. I agree with you, Agasicles, in terms of the publishing model and the game development model that I think we are hitting a point where studios either have to change what they're doing, or we kind of back away from some of those big traditional AAA games because of the cost development of it, and the challenge of reaping profits at the same time is only getting more and more difficult. And so, yes, I think whether we see a contraction in the marketplace, or we just see platforms like Stadia. I almost said stevia, but I don't need any sugar right now. So, or that those types of streaming platforms actually encourage developers to maybe bring it down a notch, right? The 8K, how important is 8K development if everything's going to be streaming out across the bandwidth, which we talked about challenges of? And so maybe that does slowly or not even, maybe even quickly put a cap on development costs, because we're hitting a ceiling in terms of accessibility.
I was just going to add all the YouTube integration that they're pitching with this is definitely interesting in light of another story that we really didn't get to that's related to Apex, which was the streamer Ninja, and apparently EA paid, what was it, $1 million for him to play Apex Legends and stream it, and that was enough for them to streamer hangers on, like that might be Google's primary financial target, is these is trying to monetize the streamers in a more efficient manner. So it's going to be interesting.
So you're suggesting that one thing that could happen, and I don't know, I mean, I'm hoping that a lot of this leads to some shakeout in transparency in the financial value that's going out into the streamer community. So to mean that, like, I have no idea how big the footprint of YouTube live streamers, what that is. I will say, from my time spent testing those platforms, right, the attractive thing about YouTube is it bar none offers the highest quality, largest bandwidth, highest bit rate to live stream too, so you can produce the highest quality, highest resolution video. So it sounds like, so you're suggesting that YouTube could change that monetization model, right, for those YouTube live streamers who monetize, and incentivize them to play Stadia, like, I guess. Wow. So I just,
Well, that was
we would
one
have
of the rumors
Stadia exclusives, right? That's the thing that just occurred to me. So they could be. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, DBQ.
No, I think, right. I mean, the exclusive piece, but also, even if it's not exclusive, one of the things that it potentially provides is that if a YouTube streamer is streaming a game, and somebody, and this is what we don't know about Stadia, is in terms of the business model, is it only streaming, or can you purchase a game through that platform as well? And so, do game sales, if you go through a streamer, do they get a cut of that as well?
All of which leads me to sing this Chain Gang song about Google going to antitrust litigation, because they have all this stuff bundled up, right? That gives them a competitive advantage in selling games, right? I mean, wow, yeah, it's mind-boggling. So, interesting times. Our generation might be playing less and observing more. Just, it might be sufficient entertainment to just watch all the shenanigans that are going to go down. As these guys all climb all over each other, trying to figure out exactly how to make this stuff work and hit potential landmines, in a politically conflagrant environment. And yeah, pretty amazing. So, anything else, gentlemen, that you guys wanted to pitch? Nope. So, thanks so much, everyone, for joining in on this episode of Enough to Keep Going, Grown Ups Who Game. This has been episode number 85 in our deep dive format. On Tuesday, the 19th of March, covering the news from the week of 11 March, with a bit of a wraparound due to GDC. We will definitely be back next week for our Gamer Experience live show. And I'm not sure exactly who's supposed to be on, but we'll be covering the games that we've been playing, as well as our Picks Plays homework assignment.
Which was the anti-assignment of,
yes,
what game did you fall off of, and why?
Right. So that's going to be it for us for tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the show and the conversation. And if you want to get in touch with us and inject your own creative vibe by asking a question or pitching a vertex of this content that we could have discussed that we missed, probably the best way to do that is either post a comment on the video on this here YouTube channel, or add us on Twitter at E2KG Network. Thanks so much for joining in. That's going to do it for us. Until next time, happy hunting. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like and the games that you love. That's going to do it for us. We will talk to you guys next week. But for the time being, we are out.